It's hard to believe how much history you can house in one building. But visit the Pavic Museum of Broadcasting and you immediately get a sense. It's a feel as you walk through and think about how communication has changed over the years. You are also reminded of what was, as we unveiled ourselves to the magic of instantaneous transmission, heard around the world. And that all started with the radio.
The 1920s is really when the radio started booming. Locally, we had some of the first commercial stations as early as 1922, and what would eventually become WCCO radio was about 1924.
And the race was on. Just like the internet moved a mountain in the digital world, so too did the radio.
One of the things that amazes me, and one of the things that a lot of people don't think about, is radio was the very first time in history that one person could communicate with millions instantly, which I think is mind-boggling. It's crazy.
A tornado that whipped through Anoka, Champlin, Corcoran, Cedar, and Maple Grove at 3:20 this afternoon had taken the lives of 9 residents. 144 have been injured, and damage is now estimated at $2 million. Destroyed are the Anoka Armory.
It wasn't long before they understood the potential and began creating entertainment that still has antennas today.
A lot of what we see still on television basically started out in radio. Soap operas were big. Game shows.
I'll take Babe Ruth home runs for 25, Alex. Now ask me something about Babe Ruth's home runs.
Well, how many home runs did Babe Ruth have?
714. Can I ding it again? Isn't there any,
no, you just get the ding it once.
You only get one ding here, huh?
That's just the one ding.
But this is where game shows, this is how they did it back in the day, huh?
Yep, and this is where we do quiz shows here for elementary school kids.
So they can put points up and ding away, huh?
And learn at the same time.
The kids is in large part why this museum exists. See, back in the 70s, Earl Bakken, a pioneer of his own technology, heard about a Pavic guy wanting to sell all the radio parts he collected over the years. They turned it into this museum.
Well, the Pavic collection, which is one of the world's largest collections of antique radio and broadcast equipment, actually, Joe Pavic was a nuts and bolts salesman from Hopkins, and he had a passion for collecting radio. And this is what happens when your collection gets out of hand. But he had collected 40 plus years.
And it now serves as an educational connection to yesteryear, for field trips to go down memory lane.
We do a ton of education here. We get thousands of school kids come through the door. We have elementary school, mostly 4th and 5th graders come through. And they get to do a little bit of old-time radio, a little bit of old-time television, and learn the history of electronic communication.
So this is one of the original tapes in terms of recording audio?
This is one of the very first tape machines in the world. This one comes from Germany. And we've got one of the very first tape machines right here in St. Louis Park.
Reel to reel, huh?
Yeah, reel to reel.
And what were they using it for at that time?
You know, the German army was actually using these early on to try to fool the enemy.
In terms of how?
In terms of maybe they would broadcast a speech that wasn't necessarily happening at the same time.
Really? Early on, there was another valuable purpose.
Here are the closing Minneapolis grain futures.
As the agricultural industry grew, so did the farmers' need for information. What better way than the radio?
Because of the weather, and they could get the market reports, and yeah, it was just, and even the term broadcasting dates back to casting your seeds for agriculture.
Then there were the legendary broadcasters that emerged, the majority at WCCO Radio, including Steve Cannon and his 3 famous fictitious broadcast co-hosts. I had the great fortune of working with Steve Cannon some, and in here you got Backlash, LaRue, Ma Linger, Morgan Mundane as well. Steve has passed on. Has Morgan ever visited the museum?
And Morgan has not been here, unfortunately.
Really?
Yeah, we're still
Just
waiting.
Too hard for him to watch?
Yeah,
and see what,
I'm not sure what the deal is, but we're still waiting for
I hear he's at Hurley's Hanging Gardens a lot still, but he just doesn't need there.
Yeah.
In the 1940s, there was a new player in town, one that changed the world. Television came to these parts, not with the high def we know today, but there were pictures. This is for remotes and when they were out and about and covering a parade or a ball game, huh?
Yeah, correct. This one was actually used in the 1952 conventions. Both the Democratic and Republican national conventions were both held in New York City in 1952. And this is the very camera that covered both of them.
And so was born a new entertainment form. Local stations found big hits with kids shows like Casey Jones.
And Casey Jones was on the air from 1954 to 1973 for the initial run, and then they did several different other versions of the show.
Soon the news became the #1 source of revenue for stations, with the legendary Dave Moore in the middle of it at WCCO-TV.
Dave was he was there for a lot of the crucial years, and he, coming from that theatrical background that Dave had, he was just very charming and just a great guy all around.
And today, we take it all for granted. But to see this exhibit is a walk through the gateway of our history, of our lives. And it all started with the radio. So is this an original radio?
This is from the mid-1920s. Yeah, original radio.
What would it have sounded like back then,
It's
King?
a little something like this.
So you can define your day.
Life to the Max is brought to you by Life Touch, photography for a lifetime.